I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, Brunning, Bruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday and we are looking back at the week 7 that was. And we're not only looking back at that for fantasy purposes and NFL purposes, but it's also time for everyone's favorite segment, the Fantasy Football Roundtable Redraft Podcast Roundup. And let me tell you, Dennis, Chubb's broken wheel is not only surviving, we are thriving this week.
You are, man.
Number one scoring team of the week, despite the fact that Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen were mostly a rumor, up to 6-1. I'm feeling pretty good about this season in honor of Nick Chubb and his broken wheel.
I don't know how you're doing it. You're getting like super lucky.
I got the one good game Mac Jones is going to have all season. Now he can go back to the bench. I survived my bye week.
Yeah. I mean, your team has been on fire. I mean, you won 2 in a row. So you started off with 4 wins, took a loss, then you won 2. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Even my loss, I think, was by less than a point. It was something ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, you're what? 1, 2, 3, 4. 5.
Much like the 2022.
Your fifth point scored, so.
Much like the 2022 Minnesota Vikings, I'm just waiting for the first round of the playoffs to disappoint.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting there at number 9 at 3-4. I did pull out a victory over Smog the Dog this week. I'm looking at, I feel bad for beating up on the kid, but it isn't like he left at some points on his bench, but not enough that would have made a difference. And then, and he's enjoying the season. He's made a couple trades. He was talking about we took him and a buddy to the Renaissance Fair last weekend for his birthday. And on the drive back, the two were talking about starting up an actual kids fantasy football league with some of their friends next year. So, he's getting into it. Jackie's, she just wants to have a better record than me. And so, we both are 3-4. She's got a 21-point lead on me. So she's liking that. And then where does she go? Beth, I don't know what she was thinking. I tried to give her heads up. She started both Deshaun Watson and PJ Walker last week.
Well, you knew one of them was going to give you maybe a point.
Right. I was like,
but it's going to be a heck of a battle down the stretch for the playoffs because we have 3 teams that are 4-3 and 4 teams that are 3-4. That's all within punching distance. John and I are 6-1. Jonathan's 5-2. A little bit of separation, but that's a pretty tight group going down the stretch here. Yep,
it'll be interesting. Old Dan down there, Snake Eyes at 0-7. I guess we can clearly say there's enough data after 7 games that the 4 tight end draft in a non-tight end premium league isn't the way to go.
He might have to change his name to Snake Bitten. Because didn't he have Rodgers? If Rodgers would have been what people thought he was, it would be a little bit of a different season.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on and take a look at some games. And we start with the Backup Bowl in Chicago, where the Las Vegas Raiders traveled to play the Chicago Bears and came away with the 30-12 loss. Dennis Brian Hoyer got the start, wasn't spectacular. Aiden O'Connell came in, was a little bit better. But the big subject, I think, for Raiders and for fantasy is Josh Jacobs. We thought he might start slow after missing camp, but this is week 7 now. 11 carries for 35 yards, 1 reception for 6 yards. Is it time to worry if you roster Josh Jacobs hoping for a top 10 season?
Yeah, I think it clearly seems that Josh McDaniels has fallen out of love with him. Or maybe he never loved him to begin with. He just felt stuck last year and had to do it. I don't know. The team should be riding Josh Jacobs, riding him long and hard. Give him the ball. I know he's not going to be super efficient. It should be Jacobs. It should be Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, regardless of who's in a quarterback. And I stand vindicated. 17 of 32 for 129 and 2 interceptions by Hoyer. They should have started Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
I know 10 of 13 for only 75 and 1-1. You know what you got in Hoyer. And he hasn't won. He's like, I think he won a game in like 2016, and then he's lost like 10 games or 12 games since.
I think it's even more than that. But yeah, I don't know why they went back to Hoyer either, because it seemed like after the beginning part of the season, they had kind of settled on O'Connell being number 2. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy misses again if they go back to him.
I mean, I get it. If you're in game and you need somebody that didn't get hardly any reps to step in and get you through the rest of the game, that's Hoyer. That's his job. But if you know Garoppolo is out and you've got a week to prep the guy, then it should always be Aiden O'Connell. Not that I think O'Connell just is young Brian Hoyer, is probably what he is. I don't think he's going to turn into Tom Brady or anything. But at least when you have a week off to prepare him, start the young guy. Maybe you'll catch lightning in a bottle.
Well, for Chicago, Tyson Bagent gets the win. Likely will be quarterbacking again. Justin Fields likely to miss some time. A dislocated thumb on your throwing hand does seem like that would be a problem. But, it's been interesting. The Bears have struggled a little bit in the backfield this season. They got all their running backs hurt, and that seems to have been the best thing to happen to them. Deonta Foreman, 16 carries, 89 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 5.6 yards per carry, 3 receptions, 31 yards, and another touchdown. Even when some of those guys start coming back healthy, do you think that maybe they ought to give Foreman another look?
That's a really tough call, because I know. So if you just look at the team, Roschon Johnson is the future. He's a back with size that's good in the passing game and pretty good in the running game. 5'11", 6 foot, 225 pounds, 221 pounds. And then Khalil Herbert, he seems to break off a big play every game that he plays. He's explosive. And I just think that it's hard to not play Khalil Herbert because he provides that explosiveness. Herbert isn't, he's a neutral, I think, in the passing game. And as much as I like Foreman, I do think you probably have to play Herbert over him. And for fantasy, we don't want a 3-headed monster. What they really need, I think, is for Tyson Bagent to up that 5.6 YPA. He threw for 10 plus area.
He went from going against the Colorado School of Mines to going against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not saying it was a monumental jump, but it was a jump. So
only 14% of his passes traveled 10 yards or more in the air. Now, I get it. It feels very Gardner Minshew-ish to me, with arm wrestling dad, folk hero. It feels very Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, we'll see if we get a little bit more on Sunday Night Football, because I think they're playing somebody harder this next week. Next up, the Cleveland Browns traveled to the Indianapolis Colts in what was kind of an interesting back and forth. Last one to possess the ball did indeed win as the Browns get the 39-38 victory. Deshaun Watson started the game, but he didn't play in there very long. Came out, cleared concussion protocol, but they held him out anyway. He remained pretty non-committal about his availability for week 8. So PJ Walker, second week in a row, does not have the kind of stat line where you're thinking, my God, I've got to put him in my fantasy lineup. But the Browns have won. What do you think of the Browns with PJ Walker?
The fighting Myles Garrett's are putting it together on the defensive side of the ball. PJ Walker, I get that Dorian Thompson-Robinson face planted in his opportunity. Just because they're winning with Walker out there, he's not the answer. Not that I'm even sure that Watson is the answer, but man, you can't have a sub 50% completion percentage and a 5.6 YPA. When you've got weapons like Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore and David Njoku.
Oh, is Amari Cooper still on the team? I couldn't tell from the way they played the box score. You see a team scores 39 points. You think, oh, I bet their wide receiver was involved. Guess again.
I disagree. He had 8 targets. Njoku had 9. Moore had 7. Walker just can't get it to him where it's catchable. It's a clusterfuck. And then you've got Jerome Ford. When you look at it's like, 74 yards and a touchdown. No, he had a 69-yard run, and then he had 10 rushes for 5 yards. I mean, that was pretty bad. 2 catches for 20. I mean, I'll take the numbers. Don't get me wrong. If I'm starting Jerome Ford, I'm happy with the day that he had. Now he has a low-grade high ankle sprain. That's like
which they said probably out 1 to 2 weeks. So Kareem Hunt, Pierre Strong, come on down.
Doesn't that sound like northeastern, southern, western state?
I mean, it does sound not that great, but I in my waiver column for Campus to Canton, I suggested you may want to pick up Pierre Strong, and I feel better about that after the news because Strong was getting some meaningful carries in there. He wasn't incredible, but he was getting some meaningful touches.
Yeah, and Strong has good size. He was a decent pass catcher in college as well. Kareem Hunt is, he's got a bruised thigh he was playing through. I don't hold out a lot of hope going into next week with PJ Walker as the trigger man.
Unless that trigger is a gun to the back of the Browns' heads. On Friday, you were bullish on Josh Downs, and you know what? I think he was listening. 5 catches, 125 yards, and a touchdown. Are you liking him more going forward?
I am. I think he's established a role. Alec Pierce is starting to make a comeback. Maybe it's getting healthy. Michael Pittman. I'd like to see Pittman getting more than 5 targets, but if one of them is going to go 75 yards for a touchdown, at least we got that going for us. But Downs, man, he looked like a baller out there this weekend, and I think he has clearly established a role on the team. It seems like they're comfortable with Downs in 2 wide receiver sets. So I like Josh Downs. Will he get 125 and a touchdown every week? Probably not, especially with Minshew back there.
You never know. On to New England, where the Buffalo Bills visited, and the Patriots got a 29-25 win. This kind of had an exciting ending, not for me because I picked the Bills and also don't care for the Patriots. But Patriots come back, get a last-second victory, 300th win for Belichick. We'll start with the Bills. They have blown 3 opponents out. They have 1 other win, but they have also had 3 kind of curious losses. Very up and down team. What do you make of the Bills?
They're just not. It seems like their chemistry is off this year. Maybe losing Dawson Knox will sort out the targets at the receiver position. With Kincaid. Kincaid was surpassing Knox anyways. we'll see more of that. What is his name? Quentin Morris or somebody like that will kind of take over the blocking role there. Gabe Davis is, doing his typical hot and cold. He had 5 targets, but only caught 1 for 6 yards. Khalil Shakir came on, 4 targets, caught all 4 of them in the short area. But it's just Stephon Diggs wasn't efficient. They don't run the ball very well. Cook had 13 for 56, which is probably one of his best games on the ground so far this year. But Latavius Murray was 4 for 8. It doesn't feel
It's
like
about the time you think Murray is a solid flex play.
yeah. It just doesn't feel like the team has great chemistry and they don't have great balance when it comes to the offense.
No, I am excited to see a little bit more from Kincaid going forward, especially with Knox out for a while. I thought that was one bright spot for fantasy anyway.
Let Quentin Morris catch 2 touchdowns next week.
Well, we won't have to wait long. They can ruin our Thursday night. On the flip side, pretty nice game for the Patriots. Mac Jones, 25 of 30, 272, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Led them on that scoring drive at the end, hitting Mike Gesicki for the go-ahead score. Is this the game we needed to see from Mac Jones?
Yeah, I think so. He spread the ball around well, got it to 10 different wide receivers. Kendrick Bourne seems to be playing with some consistency. Bourne has always been kind of an enigma. He flash in preseason and then disappear in the regular season. Demario Douglas was back, and he caught 4 for 54 on 6 targets. Heck, Ramondre Stevenson was 6 for 6 through the air. Pretty much an even split on the ground between Zeke and Ramondre. And then, but I'll take 51 yards and 6 catches for Ramondre through the air. I don't think they need to throw the ball to Pharaoh Brown even 2 times, if I'm being honest. I mean, you've got Gesicki and you've got Henry. Don't throw the ball to Pharaoh Brown.
The Bills are going to bill.
I mean, it was a early stage Brock Purdy performance from Mac Jones. Really high completion rate, good yardage, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Maybe Pharaoh Brown is the Patriots version of Quentin Morris.
Maybe.
Next up, the Commanders traveled to play the Giants, and the Giants got the 14-7 victory. Dennis, the Commanders using a 3-headed group at running back, not really able to run the ball, not getting a ton done passing either. What do you make of the Washington offense?
Well, I mean, Rodriguez did average over 4 yards a carry, and Brian Robinson did get it into the end zone. Robinson had 1 target. Gibson had 2. It's not good for fantasy. Robinson started the year seemingly having being a reliable floor guy, a low end RB2 that you could count on for, 50 to 60 yards and maybe 1 to 2 receptions and a touchdown every other game or something. He just kind of has faded away, and they need Sam Howell to not take so many sacks. You don't need to be a hero, Sam. He took 6 more sacks this week. Was not good. I mean, Robinson, though.
Every week he goes home and watches a lot of David Carr tape from the old Houston Texans days. So are you saying that wasn't what to do?
It's crazy. I mean, Robinson had a sub 50% snap share for only the 2nd time and had a season low rush share. Yeah, I don't know if that's a Ron Rivera thing, if it's an Eric Bieniemy thing, if it's a game flow thing. Howell did throw the ball 42 times, and they ran it 17 times, not including Howell. So it was, for a game that was 14-7, they threw the ball an awful lot.
Yeah, to no avail. On the flip side for the Giants, another solid night for Tyrod Taylor, 18 of 29, 279 yards, throws 2 touchdowns, runs 8 times for 25 yards. Is this Giants offense better with Tyrod Taylor?
So Daniel Jones is very, very mobile. And Tyrod Taylor is very, very mobile. For some reason, though, Taylor seems to be able to avoid the pressure and get the ball downfield to Slayton and to Hyatt and to Darren Waller. I mean, Hyatt had 2 catches for 75 yards. I mean, a 33-yarder and a 42-yarder. And it isn't like he was taking bubble screens. So I like that Hyatt had a season high 18.5% target share. Barkley caught three of 4 passes. Only 29 attempts, but he pulled out 2 touchdowns and almost 280 yards. It was a great game. And if Taylor is going to keep playing like this, I think, they're going to put Jones back in because they're writing a big fat check to him every week. But if Taylor keeps getting victories, it's going to be hard to keep him on the bench.
Yeah, they might just tell Daniel Jones he needs more time with that neck injury. You don't want to rush a guy
and that's
back.
Still sore, Danny? Yeah. No. It's still sore.
Next up, the Atlanta Falcons played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a game that was very meaningful for the NFC South. And the Falcons get the 16-13 victory, but we're not coming to praise the Falcons, but rather to talk about the fact that there were 32 carries afforded to running backs on Sunday, only one of which was given to Bijan Robinson for 3 yards. Buzz began to circulate after the game that he was sick or had a headache or something going on. The NFL is supposedly investigating this now. Dennis, what do you make of the Bijan situation? Are you buying the illness excuse?
So, the way the story goes right now is that he informed the team Saturday night at some point that he just wasn't feeling right. He had a headache, and my 12-year-old gets migraines, and I struggle. So,
Terrell Davis, who I loved, who was one of Denver's greatest, had migraines, and it's a very real thing if that's what it is.
I believe that, but as somebody who's never had a migraine, I can't wrap my head around a headache that's so. I have to overtly try to be sympathetic to people with migraines. I do, and it's I've got a person that I work with that has migraines, except on the shifts where they're making the most money. They never seem to have migraines on those days. So, so I don't know. I get it. And I just don't know. You don't know. We haven't heard of him having a history of migraines. That doesn't mean that, they didn't just start. They could come on. There's no, well, if you didn't have them by the time you were 7 years old, they're not really migraine. There's not, a migraine is a migraine. And at some point you start having them. And I think that it was legit, that there was something just not right. He didn't feel right or whatnot. I don't know if it's, latent concussion syndromes that went undiagnosed and started to pop up. That wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility either. So I believe he was held out for legitimate reasons, for how he felt. And I think that if anything was improper, it was the reporting timeline, because the NFL has rules for it. And especially now that the NFL has climbed in bed with big gambling, you can't just, you can be a head coach. It's like, F those fantasy guys all you want, but you have to, sports wagering is big business.
Yeah, and that's why I think there's a decent possibility Smith and or the Falcons get a fine for this.
Wouldn't surprise me.
On the other side, Dennis, running is also a focus for Tampa Bay. Baker's not been too bad. wasn't terrible in this one either, but 17 carries for 41 yards is all they could muster from Rashad White and Keyshawn Vaughn. They have not been able to get a running game going, and it seems like it's holding them back in some of these games. Uh, do you think this is something they can fix? Is this a problem they can overcome?
So my general perception and general belief about Rashad White is that he's relatively unremarkable as a runner. Also, that the offensive line is so subpar that we don't really know if he's any good. There are people we can have he's just a guy, and they do just fine by and large with decent blocking. He's got the 8th lowest yards before contact of any running back with a minimum of 35 carries. So I think that was close to 50 running backs with at least 35 carries. The 4th highest stuff rate at 55.4% of his runs. And that's a stuff is considered a first down run that doesn't go for 4 yards, or any run on any other down that doesn't go for at least 3 yards. So 55% of his runs are getting stuffed. And he doesn't have any explosive runs at this point. But the defense is in the backfield, when he's getting the handoff. So maybe he's better than the numbers purport. He's getting volume, that's for sure. 13 carries. What was his 13 carries and 6 targets? He did redeem himself with 65 yards on 6 receptions. So, you'll definitely take that. But that offensive line is an issue. And I don't think we're going to know exactly what Rashad White is until that offensive line gets better. And I don't know that that'll happen before he's replaced.
It's certainly not good, but the Buccaneers have a short week against a team that also isn't prolific at running the ball, the Buffalo Bills, so that should be fun. Next up, the saddest game for you and I on the day. The Detroit Lions went to play the Baltimore Ravens, and I used the term play charitably. It was 28-0 before you could blink, and a 38-6 finale. Dennis, though it happened mostly once the game was out of reach, we did see a pretty nice performance from Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. Also caught 9 passes for 58 yards. Are you encouraged by what you saw from Gibbs?
I am. My concern is, can he hold up to the volume? So he had 10 targets and 11 rushes, so 21 opportunities. Caught 9 of those passes. So while he was productive, he scored a touchdown. He had over 100 yards from scrimmage and 9 receptions. And I think, preseason with Dan Campbell being a former Saints guy, we were looking at Gibbs as being the Alvin Kamara player. And this was an Alvin Kamara game. So we'll take it. I want to see him continue to handle 15 or so carries a game, be productive, and not get injured, because Kamara played through. Great contact balance, very sturdy, 215-pound guy. He dished it out. He was very elusive. Will Gibbs go ahead and start to sort of give us some of that opportunity? I'd prefer to see him getting the opportunity with Jared Goff throwing the ball like 35 times instead of 55 times, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think he ended up throwing so much probably because of the score. But that's what we'll hope.
The defense, man, just crapped the bed on the Ravens, man.
On the flip side, was this a statement game for the Ravens? They've been trying to take a step forward. Lamar Jackson looked every bit like an MVP, 21-27, 357 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Ran for 36 yards and a touchdown. Pretty big win by them, right?
I think it was a huge win, considering the way Detroit was being played in the press. Is they're finally having a great team. Dan Campbell's got his finger on the pulse, pushing all the right buttons, yada, yada, yada. And then the Ravens just came in and smacked him in the mouth. Lamar had a phenomenal game, and he's turning into one of the top passers in the league. I think, what are we? This was week 7. He's getting reps under his belt in this offense. He had the offseason, the preseason, now it's live game action, starting to execute it. I don't like OBJ leading him in targets. Keep getting that ball to Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews.
Well, even the blind squirrel gets some targets every once in a while.
That's right.
On to the afternoon games. The Pittsburgh Steelers came off a bye, headed to the Los Angeles Rams, and got the surprising 24-17 victory. Dennis, the Steelers were able to do it thanks to a heavy dose of defense and 3 rushing touchdowns in the second half. Did you like what you saw from the Steelers? You think they can make a run in the AFC?
I think 25 attempts is like where Pickett's going to need to be. They've got a defense that can contend. Their defense is playing pretty well. Najee, 14 carries, 53 yards, almost 4 yards a carry, got a touchdown. Caught all 3 of his targets for 15 yards. So I like that as somebody who rosters Najee. I would have liked Najee to be at maybe 18 carries. They need better overall play from Pickett. He can't be putting up 0 touchdowns. His yards per attempt is 24th in the league.
At least he got the rushing touchdown on the rare 8 carries for 0 yards.
Yeah. I mean, what do you have? On QBs with 100 dropbacks, Pickett's 24th on yards per attempt at just under 6.5. He's 30th in completion percentage at 59%. You got to be up at 65% or better. His ADOT's 23rd at 7.7 yards. His deep throw percentage is 28th, only 6.9%. Going down. I mean, how can you only have 6.9% deep throw percentage when you've got George Pickens and Deontay Johnson? And I get it, Deontay missed some games, but still, you got Pickens. He has the highest off-target throw of any quarterback with at least 100 dropbacks. 24.5% of his throws are considered off-target per fantasy points data, and he's 24th in fantasy points per dropback. They need better play out of the quarterback position. They've got good wide receivers. They've got good running backs in Harris and Warren. The defense is really good, makes some big plays.
Yeah, the AFC North turning out to be pretty competitive. For the Rams, going into the week, Kyren Williams now is on IR. We'll miss at least 3 more games. Ronnie Rivers also on IR. We thought that would open the door for Zach Evans, who didn't record a single touch on Sunday. Instead, we got the return of Darrell Henderson, 18 carries, 61 yards, and a touchdown, and the return of Royce Freeman that no one ever asked for, 12 carries for 66 yards. Dennis, what are you doing with the Rams backfield?
Man, I'm avoiding it however I can, because next week it's going to be Zach Evans getting 17 carries.
I was going to say we haven't gotten to Arizona, but you were dead on with Amari DeMarcado.
It's just Evans needs to get some playing time in the offense to see what he can do. But he also has to earn the trust of Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. And whether it's Stafford saying, look, this kid's going to get me killed, because Stafford is, he's got that Tom Brady-esque mobility. And whether he thinks the kid just can't protect him, or, he just is putting it on the ground in practice. Something's going on that they're just not ready to give Evans an opportunity. Henderson was so highly thought of that he was not signed to a contract until a week ago tomorrow. So, and I get it. He knows the offense. He's played in it. Yes, he'll need a little bit of a refresher course. Royce Freeman's been there, but Royce has been, the jaggiest of Jags, despite my initial love for him coming out. I think that if you're in, so what do we have no buys or 2 buys this week?
No buys for reasons surpassing understanding.
So you're probably not starting Henderson or Freeman this week, but we got another 6 bye week coming up. And unless the Rams are one of those teams with a bye, you're probably going to have one or both of them in starting lineups, especially if they keep splitting this, 50-50, 55-45 and being relatively productive. I mean, when you've got Puka Nacua and or Cooper Kupp and or Tutu Atwell putting up numbers in the passing game, it does kind of take the pressure off the running game.
And they did that against the Steelers front. That's not too shabby. I mean, 30 carries for 27 yards. Pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, the Arizona Cardinals traveled to play the Seattle Seahawks and came away with the 20-10 loss. Dennis, the Cardinals are 1-6, but they made hay last week, activating Kyler Murray's 21-day practice window. Is this really a team that should be trying to bring Kyler Murray back?
I don't think so. But, they're going to get James Conner back. Michael Wilson has flashed. Trey McBride is now the tight end, and he's looked great. Hollywood Brown. We've seen Rondale Moore break off some plays. The defense has been serviceable, not great. Is it outside the question that they could break off, 10 wins? They have 3 division games left, all at home, against the Rams, who have had their struggles. San Francisco's pretty good. And the Seahawks could be, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not. You just never quite know. I don't think so, but they could get to 9-8 and be a wild card team. And I suppose if you feel that Josh Dobbs isn't going to get you there, we know that. I mean, if they're smart, they're trading Josh Dobbs back to Cleveland.
Honestly, are they even trying to get anywhere? They seem like the perfect candidates to go for the top pick, and you're blowing it.
We've seen teams blow it.
Meanwhile, Seattle DK Metcalf was not able to go, so it was a big day for rookie receivers. We saw Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Before we move on, you mentioned we were going to mention DeMarcado. 93% of the team's rushing back rushes and 15.2% target share a week after he was. So it was 9 days after he was the highest.
Yeah, and there was zero touches for Ingram
after he was the biggest drop.
Yeah, no, and
Ingram didn't play a single offensive snap.
It makes no sense. For Seattle, DK Metcalf was out, so it was a big day for rookie wide receivers. Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jake Bobo each caught 4 passes for more than 60 yards and a touchdown. What did you think of the performances?
And that Bobo touchdown was a thing of beauty, wasn't it? It was funny. We were having a talk last night, Cole and I, watching the game, and somebody caught a pass that was, I don't know if it was ruled a catch or ruled a touchdown. And Cole's like, oh, well, no, he was out. He didn't get both feet in. And I'm like, no, he didn't get both feet in, but he got a shin in. And he's like, what, a shin? I'm like, yeah, a shin. And that's kind of what Bobo did, that down there in the corner of the end zone. He got that leg down. The old, 1 knee equals 2 feet. I think they've got something in Bobo. If he keeps playing like he is over the next couple of years, we could find them not working real hard to re-sign DK Metcalf when that contract is up. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, very highly regarded first-round pick. So Metcalf and Lockett and JSN and Bobo makes for a nice wide receiver group this year. Unfortunately, they've got Geno Smith as their quarterback.
He looked okay on those plays, though. You mentioned Metcalf's contract. He is in, I think he just did a 3-year 72 extension. It looks like they could get out of it after 2024. So with $11.5 million of dead cap.
Yeah, that's not unreasonable.
No, it's not reasonable. Next up, the game that Took years off my life, but ended up successfully as the Green Bay Packers traveled to Denver and got the 17-19 loss. Dennis, the Packers were held scoreless in the first half, managed 17 points in the second half, but never looked incredible against a defense that had been allowing quite a bit of yards and production prior to that. What do you make of Green Bay's offense for a team that's now 2-4?
Jordan Love is still QB 12. He's hanging in there, and two of his last 3 games, he finally got over 60% completion rate, both of them being over 63%. And prior to that, he had 4 of those 6 games. He was 56% or lower, and 21 of 31, good completion percentage there. They've got a nice wide receiver core in Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, and Christian Watson. They've got a nice group of receivers. I don't think they bring back A.J. Dillon. And Aaron Jones probably has another year with the team because he's got a fairly friendly deal. But their receiving group is playing well. Dontavian Wicks looks good as the wide receiver 4. And they're putting together a very nice, Samori Toure as a deep shot guy. So they've got 5 young wide receivers that if they continue to grow, and if Christian Watson can, stay healthy maybe. But there's opportunity. And, we bang on Jordan Love a lot, but the reality is he was riding the pine for 3 years. Now he's playing. There's going to be some growing pains. You just want to let him, keep getting better, keep doing what he needs to do to keep improving. If you can get that completion percentage consistently over 65% with that receiving core, I think they're going to be just fine.
Meanwhile, for Denver, we got the word, if you were watching the game, that this was the first week they had removed the snap restrictions for Javonte Williams. Would have been nice to know he had snap restrictions earlier in the season, but it definitely looked like encouraging usage. He got 15 carries, which is the most he's seen this year, 82 yards rushing, caught 3 passes for 14 yards. Were you encouraged by the uptick in usage?
I was. I mean, it led the snaps pretty comfortably, 53%. To 25% for P. Ryan, 17% for everybody's All-American, Jaleel McLaughlin. Carries, targets, receptions, i.e. opportunities. Williams had 19 to, P. Ryan had 5, and McLaughlin had 7. So that was outstanding. 58% opportunity share for Wilson, 21 for P. Ryan, 21 for McLaughlin. If they can, Javonte Williams, he has the talent to have that share each week. I think we'll see a little bit more of P. Ryan kind of starting to fade away because McLaughlin does provide that explosiveness. And as Javonte gets healthier, he's got some explosiveness to him as well.
Next up, the Chargers traveled to play the Kansas City Chiefs, who got the 31-17 victory. Dennis, for the Chargers, Josh Palmer, 7 targets, 5 receptions for 133 yards. He led them in receptions and yardage last year as he's filled in for injury. Should we be taking him seriously as a week-to-week start?
Yeah, he's wide receiver 22 over the last 2 weeks, and I get that that's a small sample size. But he just is... he's big time Quentin Johnston. And now with Eckler back, Johnston just keeps getting pushed further and further away. And it's odd that, their usage of Johnston is contrary to what they said they liked about him. I.e., they like Johnston because of his, his ability to run after the catch, but they keep using Johnston in the way they use Mike Williams, and that's just not his game. So I think we'll continue to see Joshua Palmer be that second receiver to Keenan Allen. He'll get the ball over the tight ends. He's providing. I was listening to somebody the other day, and they were talking about, well, I guess I have to give Palmer, more respect, more respect as a legitimate, option. I struggle with old guys like Palmer and Thielen. And I went and looked, and Palmer's like 25 years old. It just feels like he's been in the league like 10 years.
I know. I think he was like a 2020 or 2021 pick.
So yeah, I think he's like last year and even this year with Mike Williams healthy. I would say I thought that the Chargers had the second best top three wide receivers behind Cincinnati. Last year, I felt like with Jalen Guyton, they had the best top four. But I've always liked Palmer a lot. When he gets the opportunity, he doesn't have the natural talent that Mike Williams or even Quentin Johnston has. And Keenan Allen is so established as a route runner and volume hog that he's not going to overtake that. But when he gets a chance to play, he plays, he makes stuff happen. He'd be higher for the season because he was playing in 3 wide receiver sets. I was a little surprised that he was as low as he was in the wide receiver. I think he was like in the 40s still, 40s or 50s. But that's basically a function of he's only gotten in the end zone one time, I think.
Well, they've also already had their bye. Speaking of Guyton, they opened his 21-day window, so that could push Johnson even further down the list.
I saw that.
For the Chiefs, they opened the season with a loss to the Lions on opening night. Since then, they've quietly won 6 in a row. They have a 3-game lead in their own division heading into Week 8, having already swept all 3 division opponents in their first meeting. Are the Chiefs the best team in the AFC again?
I melet me look through the list here. So the Chiefs are, Mahomes and Kelsey, and they make so much happen. Now Rashee Rice is starting to come on, and it's easy to be down on the Chiefs because their receiving core is so nondescript. Let's see, 4, 8, 11 different guys caught passes last week. Mecole Hardman even caught a pass after being brought back from Corsica. And I think that because of the number of players that they run through the wide receiver core, it's easy to get wrapped up in like they don't have any stars. But Rashee Rice, 6 targets, 5 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. He's establishing, easy for me to say, himself as that receiver. Kadarius Toney isn't, and much to my chagrin, Sky Moore hasn't really done it either. I thought he would have a better year. Maybe we'll have a year 3 breakout, but he isn't breaking out this year. I think as well as their defense is playing, I think, you got to say they're the best team in the AFC. You wonder if I'm going to make it back to that question and answer it, didn't you? Because I got lost teams and things.
No, that's good. Next up, the Miami Dolphins traveled to play the Philadelphia Eagles and came away with the 31-17 loss. Dennis, the Dolphins have had some really high highs and have put up some exceptional numbers in some of the games, but they haven't played the toughest schedule, and we've seen them get pretty well handled both by Buffalo and now by the Eagles. So how do you view the Dolphins as contenders?
I think they are contenders. They have to learn to beat good teams. Ray Summerlin from Sharp Football Analysis pointed out their 5 wins are versus teams with an 8-25 record, and they have a plus 95 points differential, 50 of those thanks to your Broncos. Their 2 losses are versus teams with a record of 10-4, and they have a minus 42 point differential. So when they go up against good teams, like I think one of the things that the Eagles did is they keep the ball from them. Yes, they're explosive with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and DeAndre Swift and Dallas Goedert. They can be very explosive, but also they can grind out long drives and keep the Miami offense off the field. I think that the Dolphins have to figure out how to win games when their offense isn't clicking. And Monday night, Sunday night, that was a night where their offense just wasn't clicking. They couldn't get the running game going, and they needed to stop the Eagles, and they just couldn't stop the Eagles, and they just couldn't make it happen on offense.
Meanwhile, we were a little worried about being able to play Dallas Goedert, and he responded with a big week last week, caught 5 more for 77 and a touchdown this week. Do you just have to keep throwing him out there, knowing that, like Kittle, you might not always have a great game?
Yeah, I mean, aside from week 1, the targets were there. Let's see where he's sitting on the season. He's tight end 6 on the year. So I think with Goddard, he's at the top of the massive tier. Maybe there's a second tier outside of Kelsey. Maybe Goddard makes it into the back of that tier, or maybe there's a tier with Hockenson and Andrews, and then that third tier, instead of being 20 tight ends big, maybe now it's like 5 or 6, and Goddard is in that mix. Goddard's a good tight end. He is on the field. He plays a ton of snaps. He's a good blocker. And if the targets are there, the production's going to come. He runs a lot of routes. It just, the underlying metrics say, some weeks, and we see it, some weeks your studs just crap the bed and you just kind of hope it ain't in the championship game. And that happens.
Speaking of a little bit of a crapping of the bed, the 49ers went into Monday Night Football hoping to bounce back from a week 6 loss, and they just tacked on one. Vikings get the 22-17 victory. Dennis, is the shine coming off the Brock Purdy experience a little bit?
So he was 21 of 30 for 272 yards. He had 2 unfortunate interceptions in the second half. The last one, is a big shining, arrow pointing, because it was on a game-winning drive attempt. And that was it wasn't a great throw. Maybe Debo being out had something to do with it. Probably not. I tend to not think so. I think Jawan Jennings is a decent wide receiver. 5 of 9 for 64 yards. Kittle had a good game. Maybe in the second half, you still keep throwing the ball to Brandon Ayuk when he catches all 5 passes in the first half, or 5 of 6 in the first half. Purdy is a game manager. His numbers get a little bit inflated because Christian McCaffrey catches a lot of passes and Christian McCaffrey scores a lot of touchdowns. And Debo Samuel catches passes, scores touchdowns. Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. So they have an explosive offense. And so he looks sometimes maybe a little bit better than he really is. And it's easy when he's on a heater like he was to end last year and start this year, man, it's easy to keep rolling those dice, keep cashing in and keep cashing in. You're at that table and you're hot, and, you're telling that gal next to you that's, Lady Luck, and you're like, don't you move. Well, she moved in these last couple games. He's come down to earth, but he's a game manager. They don't just accidentally not draft a stud until the last pick of the draft. And I get it. Brady turned out to be a stud. But when Brady started out, the first several seasons of his career, it wasn't like he was, putting up 350 and 3 every game. He was a game manager. So,
meanwhile, the Vikings started 1-4. Justin Jefferson went on IR. Rumors they were going to trade Kirk Cousins, and all of a sudden, 2-game winning streak. They're 3-4 now. They host Green Bay the chance to get back to 500, do you think the Vikings can turn it around and get back in the playoff race?
Maybe. If they do, it might be on the shoulders of the diminutive Jordan Addison. He had a game. He looked phenomenal. It was when Charvarius Ward took the interception away from him in that one, and then the way he took the ball away from Ward in the second half and scored that second long touchdown. It was Jordan Addison looks good. I'm taking some L's on these little wide receivers in this draft. Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs. I'm here taking the L.
I kind of liked what we saw from Brandon Powell too. I thought he was a nice third compliment.
So I picked Powell up in a couple leagues last year after watching him flash a little bit in Los Angeles. I didn't really keep him around. He was an end of the bencher. And then Cam Akers had some pop to him as well. He ended up with only 3.1 yards per carry, but he had more carries than Alexander Madison, and he had more the same amount of targets, was just a lot more effective on his receptions.
He was listening on Friday when I suggested he was droppable.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap on week 7. Before we get out of here, week 8 begins on Thursday night as the 3-3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers are at the 4-3 Buffalo Bills. Dennis, the point spread is -8.5 for Buffalo, and I'm not exactly sure why they have earned 8.5 point spread with the way they're playing. I am taking the Bills for the victory, but I don't think they cover that spread. How do you feel about Thursday night?
I agree with you. I mean, I tend to shy away from big spreads in the NFL anyways. So it is. But I mean, are we going to be surprised if Baker and Tampa goes in there and he takes 7 sacks and puts up 129 yards and 3 interceptions? I mean, it's Baker Mayfield, for Christ's sakes.
Well, hard to do better than that. Dennis, we have a couple of days before that game. How can the people fill the long, lonely hours?
Go give us a subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave us a rating and a review. We love those.
This week we will be back with you on Thursday as a little entree before Thursday Night Football, previewing all of the Week 8 action. So we will see you on Thursday night.